Sight for Wight News for Friday the 20th of March 2020, read by Chris
and Susan.
Coronavirus update, 20th of March. It is with great regret that we have decided to temporarily stop all Sight for Wight activities, social groups and coffee mornings due to the escalating coronavirus situation until further notice. This includes the low vision exhibition, which was due to take place on Saturday the 21st of March at New Close Cricket Ground. A new date will be announced in the future. Staff at Millbrook House are now working remotely from home, but the building is not open to the public. Staff are able to answer both phone calls and emails from home during working hours. We shall, however, continue to produce a slightly shortened talking news. Like the common cold and flu, coronavirus infection usually occurs through close contact with an infected person via coughs and sneezes or hand contact. A person can also be infected by touching contaminated surfaces if they do not wash their hands. Since our earlier advice, the risk of being in close contact with a person with coronavirus or contaminated surfaces has increased with its continuing spread. To protect yourself and others from infection, you are advised to always carry tissues with you and use them to catch your cough or sneeze. Then bin the tissue and wash your hands or use a sanitizer gel. Wash your hands often with soap and water, especially after using public transport. Use a sanitizer gel if soap and water are not available. Avoid touching your eyes, nose and mouth with unwashed hands. Avoid close contact with people who are unwell. Please follow current guidelines on self-isolation as appropriate. You can find the latest information and advice from Public Health England at www.gov.uk/coronavirus.
Any other news? Dining in the Dark Challenge. Newport-based Vector Sunrise Rotary Club are hosting this event to raise money for Sight for Wight on Friday the 24th of April 2020 at the restaurant at the Isle of Wight College from 6:30pm to 9pm. Tickets are available from Eventbrite at £42 each. This is currently scheduled to go ahead, although this is subject to change. New £20 note. The new £20 note entered circulation on the 20th of February. The new note is the same size and has similar colours to the paper note. It also has the tactile feature, which is created by a series of raised dots, as do the new £10 and £5 notes. The tactile dots are in the top left-hand corner. The £20 note has 3 dots, the £10 note has 2 dots, and the £5 note doesn't have any dots.
This week's In Touch. Coronavirus and pavement parking. As more information about measures to reduce the impact of coronavirus are revealed, what is their impact on the blind and visually impaired? Reliance on touch and the impact of too much caution could have serious implications, according to listener Kirsten Hearn. And Director of Operations at Guide Dogs, Peter Osborne, tells us what his organisation is doing to mitigate the situation in a time of upheaval. And he hinted at a change on our programme a few weeks ago. But Grant Shapps has revealed measures to ban pavement parking in England. We worked through the implications of a consultation with Tom Walker and Sarah Lambert, Head of Social Change at RNIB, gives a reaction. And, if you need some light relief, a clip from Chris McCausland's recent Now Show appearance on the joys of audio description.
The headlines from the Isle of Wight County Press, March the 20th, 2020. When you're on your own, we are there with you. You have been there for us through the toughest of times. We want you to know that your newspaper will be there for you now. We are living in unprecedented times. None of us have seen anything like this coronavirus pandemic before. As the Prime Minister said, we are facing the worst public health crisis in a generation. But together, down the years, this newspaper and its readers have come through some of the greatest threats to society ever recorded. And if we continue to stick together, we will come through this too. Our lives are being turned upside down. Schools are shutting down. Parents are struggling to juggle work and home life. Businesses are scrambling to protect their employees while safeguarding their very future. Pubs, clubs, restaurants, theatres, cafes, sports centres, and many, many more small independent traders all facing months of tradeless isolation. Thanks must go to those putting themselves in harm's way in the care sector, as the NHS prepares to look coronavirus in the eye and not back down. Caring for our loved ones, should they be amongst those who contract the virus, thousands will. But there are things we can all do to better protect ourselves and our families. It starts by seeking out the very latest expert guidance on what to do and what not to do as the pandemic gathers pace in the coming weeks and months. We will bring you that guidance. We know that for you, having a constant feed of reliable news and information that you trust is vital. And this is our commitment to you. Whatever happens, we will be there for you. There to help you make sense of the situation. There to steer you towards any help you might need. There to offer reassurance and calm, steady hand. We know that in the worst of times, the very best people comes to the fore, and so part of the commitment we are making to you today is to shine a light on the heroes in this hour of need. The volunteers getting bread, cheese and milk for those who cannot. The fundraisers keeping small businesses afloat. The care and the community nurses not stopping for breath on their mission to look after the vulnerable. We will highlight any positive community initiatives and good causes. We know that you are going to need us just as much as we need you. We will be there for you as, down the years, you have been there for us. Together we will defeat coronavirus and emerge from it as a stronger, tighter, more resilient communities than ever before. Look after each other. Alan Marriott, editor of the Isle of Wight County Press.
Water Mystery Causing Misery by Lucy Morgan. A Ryde woman is living with a pond pump working 24 hours and an outdoor water butt in her lounge to prevent flooding. Corinne Brougham said she does not know where to turn 6 weeks after she began battling a constant flow of water pouring through her front wall. The worry is stopping her from sleeping, and she is terrified about the potential consequences of a power cut. The 75-year-old is awaiting a final decision from insurance company Nationwide and its underwriter RSA. In the meantime, Corinne is racking up phone bills to insurers, utility and communications firms. Reliant on her son, a builder, for support, she said, "I've lost a stone in weight. I haven't got a life anymore. And although I'm scared to go out and leave the pumps, I have to, because I can't stand to hear them whirring anymore." Hoses are running through the living room, draining water into Mrs. Brougham's only bathroom. Having a shower means balancing precariously on the hoses, and she has had to pour bleach into the water butt to kill flies caused by standing water. Mrs. Brougham has lived in her home for 37 years and has never had the problem before. A nationwide spokesman said, "We sympathise and both we and RSA are working hard to resolve what is a more complex claim as quickly as possible. It remains unclear why water is entering the property." Corinne says she has yet to receive anything in writing, and to add to her concerns, she fears she may have to self-isolate following government advice on coronavirus. Southern Water said, "We sent an inspector to this property and took samples. The results confirmed the water was not anything to do with our assets or operations." Island Road said, "All the available evidence has shown this is outside our control. We have nevertheless commissioned further tests to see if we can help her try to establish the origin."
Homes flooded with muddy water. Residents in Arreton had to move out of their homes when muddy water washed off fields and flooded their properties. One family had to move out for 3 months when they were left without a bathroom. The homeowner said, "It all happened so quickly. It was 3 months of upheaval and changing our routine. It was a nightmare. With sandbags we then coped through Storm Dennis, but it has made us nervous." An Island Road spokeswoman said the flooding was caused by high volumes of runoff water comprised by silt from fields near the homes. The spokesperson said, "Land adjacent to the highway, which goes beyond the scope of our responsibility, can become waterlogged during extreme weather, or if there are inadequate drainage systems in place. This can cause water, silt and other debris to discharge onto the highway or into drainage systems, which can cause localised flooding. We continue to remind landowners it is their responsibility by law to prevent this from happening, and ditches and streams on their property are kept clear. The existing highway surface water system was on this occasion compromised by high volumes of runoff water that contained high levels of silt."
We need proper flood defences by Laurie Little. Recent flooding at a residential development in Sandown has caused anguish for residents, amid claims the landlord is not helping matters. Perry Clifton lives at Riverview Court off Avenue Road, which was badly affected when Moreton Marsh flooded and the Eastern Yar River burst its banks earlier this month. He said, "Though I totally accept the weather has been most unusual of late, this problem could have been less severe if our landlords had implemented proper flood defences when the site was first set up around late 2016. The flooding is not the only issue. I have only just recently managed to get mains electricity on, and we still have no broadband or landlines, as promised, no proper site drainage, let alone mains gas." Another Riverview Court resident, who didn't want to be named, backed up Mr Clifton and said the flooding prevented him using their parking space. The landlord, Cavendish Park Homes, has as one of its directors Royston Cooper. He was involved as director of Frankham Real Estates when the company was fined after failing to provide adequate living standards at one of its caravan sites. The company was fined £15,000 in 2018 after failing to fix issues which left residents of Lacister Grove Caravan Park in West Sussex with terrible sewage smells and intermittent water supplies. Cavendish Park Homes said it has purchased materials to deal with the flooding at Riverview and drainage problems at the rear boundary. Currently, the water levels are too high for the work to be carried out, but residents have been notified. It said the supply of mains or bulk tanked gas and telephone lines would be available this year. It said, "Cavendish Park Homes prides itself on the quality of its parks and truly believes it operates the best residential park home estate on the island. It would welcome the local authority to deal with the flooding in the area as would the whole of Sandown. The spokesperson said Mr. Clifton has been offered a full refund for his home, along with payment of any legal and associated costs, such as removals, an offer which still stands. They said, if life on the park is in fact awful and there are plenty other sites on the island to which he can move, this raises the question as to the motive behind his spurious complaints. The county press has approached the Environment Agency for clarification on any future plans for flood defences in the area.
Team Isle of Wight, ready to rise to the challenge, by Lucy Morgan. Team IW is in action, said the leader of the Isle of Wight Council, as community leaders cite amazing efforts, difficult decisions, and speak of rebuilding after coronavirus. Councillor Dave Stewart called COVID-19 a once-in-a-lifetime major public health pandemic and thanked County Hall employees as well as islanders who are stepping up to help the vulnerable. Councillor Stewart said, so far I have seen nothing but total commitment from our council officers and staff. I have heard of amazing efforts by many people in our community who are already rising to the challenge and supporting others at this time of need. Our absolute priority is the safety and well-being of everyone in our island community. We will get beyond coronavirus. Most tour operators have cancelled trips both to and from the Isle of Wight, leading the island's tourism boss to call the current situation unlike anything that has been encountered before. Managing Director of Visit Isle of Wight, Will Miles, said, we are being asked questions that at no time did anyone envisage we would ever be asked. How can I keep my business going? How will I pay my staff? What can I do to keep my attraction alive? I am speaking to the government bodies, our MP and our local council, while seeking advice from national tourism and trade bodies. We are in regular contact with our island ferry and transport providers to ensure we are all aligned with our approach. Stephen Holbrook, Chief Executive of Isle of Wight Chamber, said more clarity was needed. He said the situation is changing day to day and many island businesses are bracing themselves for difficult situations and difficult choices. The Isle of Wight Chamber is responding in real time to an evolving situation. We will continue to represent the voice of our members in this crisis. Businesses are currently in desperate need of clarity around access to the new government support packages. I am in daily contact with MP Bob Seeley and in regular contact with the Isle of Wight Council Chief Executive John Metcalfe. Every concern presented to me personally has been passed to the MP for his response, and so he can understand and best press the concerns of island businesses to government.
Staying in cars on ferries okay. Cross-Solent ferry firms have agreed a deal with the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency that will allow passengers to remain in their vehicles on some crossings. As the Isle of Wight battles to contain coronavirus, Wightlink says the St Clair ferry will be designated a stay-in-your-vehicle boat on all even-hour sailings from Portsmouth and all odd-hour sailings from Fishbourne. No foot passengers will be allowed, passenger lounges will be closed, shops and cafes will not open, and there will also be no access to on-board toilets. The Lymington-Yarmouth route and all other Fishbourne-Portsmouth ferries are unaffected. Wightlink said, we are doing our best to protect customers while they travel with us and our colleagues on board our ships and at our ports. Meanwhile, Red Funnel says its 7:30pm and 10:30pm sailings from East Cowes and 6pm and 9pm sailings from Southampton will be for people staying in vehicles, while other passenger areas will be closed. Fran Collins, Red Funnel's chief executive, said, "I'm very pleased we are now able to provide a solution and thank our customers for their patience as we seek to adapt." The news has been welcomed by the Isle of Wight Transport for Infrastructure Board. Chairman Christopher Garnett said, "I would like to thank the ferry companies and MP Bob Seeley." Mr. Seeley said, "This gives reassurance to everybody, but especially high-risk groups."
Church services. Church services across the Portsmouth Diocese, which includes the Isle of Wight, are on hold because of the coronavirus. Churches remain open for prayer where possible, although worshippers are being asked to observe social distancing. Public worship services are suspended, said the Church of England. It is urging Christians to embrace being a radically different sort of church. Some worship will be live streamed, and the Church of England is urging Isle of Wight congregations to be in the forefront of providing practical care and support for the most poor and the most vulnerable during the crisis. The Catholic Church has thanked its clergy and parish ministers for their generosity and willingness to minister in new and different ways. Bishop Philip Egan of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Portsmouth said, "As Catholics, we must tackle this crisis with spiritual as well as human resources. Let us pray for a speedy solution for those who are sick, for the protection of the elderly and the vulnerable, for those in self-isolation, for all who are suffering anxiety and worry, for the homeless and the needy, for the well-being and financial security of all, for the NHS medical staff and all who care for the sick, and the repose of those who have died."
Isle of Wight holiday spots of year. Just when we needed some good news, the Isle of Wight has been named the UK's holiday destination of the year. The island has been crowned the BBC Countryfile magazine Holiday Destination of the Year following a national vote. The Isle of Wight was able to hold off tough competition from Essex, Orkney, Anglesey and the Severn Valley to claim the top prize. Will Miles, Managing Director at Visit Isle of Wight, said it was a great achievement. He said, "The BBC Countryfile Magazine Awards is a prestigious competition and I would like to thank everybody who voted for the Isle of Wight. Winning Holiday Destination of the Year is something that all the businesses here on the island who look after our visitors can be proud of. They help to create experiences and memories that last a lifetime. And it's not the only win for the island in the Countryfile Magazine Awards. The reintroduction of the white-tailed sea eagle was voted Wildlife Success Project of the Year. Will said, "I'm so glad the Roy Dennis Wildlife Foundation and Forestry England have won this award. It's a great way to recognise their dedication and passion." In 2019, the Isle of Wight claimed the UK's Best Beach for Sandown Bay and the Best Village for Bembridge. Will said, "This will help us even further market the island to the rest of the UK and beyond." These are tough times and marketing the Isle of Wight becomes even more important than ever before. So by continuing to work together, we will be in a stronger position.
Who Wants to Live in a Fort Like This? By Louise Hill. A fort in the middle of the Solent, which was put up for sale earlier this year, could become one big house. No Man's Land Fort, one of 3 in the Solent, was a 4-star hotel, developed by Mike Clare, founder of the bed company Dreams, with 23 ensuite bedrooms, staff quarters and 5 themed bars. In September last year, it was announced the forts were to be sold off by Mr. Clare, when it was thought No Man's and Spitbank forts could fetch 8 million together. Now a planning application for No Man's, which also currently has a lighthouse laser battle play area and spa, is asking the Isle of Wight Council for permission to change the hotel into a single residential property. Plans put forward by Mr Clare's holding company, Clare & Co, could turn it from a hotel into a house with at least 15 bedrooms. The forts were built by Prime Minister Lord Palmerston between 1859 and 1865, but were decommissioned in 1956. Comments on the application can be made until April the 14th.
When Jagger and Co. came to Ryde. A collection of Rolling Stones memorabilia from the band's memorable appearance at the Esplanade Pavilion in Ryde in 1964 is up for auction. The sale includes items such as the original contract for the show, signed by Brian Jones, autographs from all 5 original members, and even one of Mick Jagger's maracas from the concert. The auction runs until Thursday on justcollecting.com, with live bidding available through Invaluable. The Stones had been booked by science teacher David Sparks. The band played 2 30-minute shows supported by local groups the Cherokees and the Shamrocks. It was the only time the band appeared on the island until their return in 2007 when they headlined the Isle of Wight Festival. Dan Wade of justcollecting.com said, "This auction will spark some serious nostalgia for anyone who attended the shows." The collection belongs to David Sparks' daughter, Janet Moran, who attended the concert as a 7-year-old child. The main highlights include a maraca used by Mick Jagger, estimate £750 to £1,000, a drumstick used by Charlie Watts, estimate £700 to £900, a vintage Rolling Stones booklet page signed by the band, £2,000 to £2,500, the original contract for the performance signed by Brian Jones, £250 to £350, an original 1964 tour programme, £80 to £100, an original unused ticket, £50 to £60. The collection also includes a letter of thanks to Mr Sparks.
Safe places for those with special needs. A scheme aimed at adults with learning disabilities and people with autism intends to eliminate the fear of going out in public. Safe Places is part of a national network of projects, with shops and cafes on high streets asked to display a poster in their window. People aged 18 and over with learning disabilities or autism who are feeling scared or lost can call into the premises, show the shop assistant their Safe Place card, which has their name and contact details of a family member or carer on it, and the employee will contact them. On the Isle of Wight, Safe Places is being promoted by People Matter, an independent living charity. Its members have started distributing cards and, along with the Town Council, are hoping to set a scheme up in Ventnor. Businesses keen to participate can attend a training session and could call Tony MacArthur at tony@ventnortowncouncil.org.uk or call 857 848.
Council tax discounts. Isle of Wight residents who claim single-person discount on their council tax bills are being notified of a forthcoming review. Letters are being sent out this month reminding people they must tell the council if they are no longer eligible for the 25% discount. The letters will accompany annual council tax bills and will be followed in April or May with a review of households where a single-person discount is currently awarded. This is to check that island council taxpayers who currently benefit remain entitled to the discount. The council has appointed an external agency using data matching technology to identify where people may be claiming discounts they are not entitled to. As part of the review, and where some doubt exists, households will be contacted and given a deadline to confirm their status.
Honouring Mum's Fight with Dementia by Liam Chorley. An Isle of Wight video blogger has joined the call to raise awareness of vascular dementia. Claire Sales, 44, knows all too well the heartbreak the crippling condition can cause, having seen her late mother, Marianne, degenerate, robbed of her memory and dignity. "We'd go shopping and she'd wander off and not tell me," said Claire. Marianne became forgetful and started hallucinating, describing people and objects that weren't there. She experienced a great deal of confusion before she was diagnosed with vascular dementia at a care home, losing her battle in 2017, aged 85. Marianne was writing a book about her life in Sussex during the Second World War, but was unable to finish as her condition worsened. To honour her mother's effort, Claire compiled and self-published the book. The experience was urged Claire to fundraise for the British Heart Foundation and raise awareness of vascular dementia. Marianne's story is one of thousands the British Heart Foundation is shining a light on with a new campaign to boost funding to research into finding ways to prevent and treat the disease. While vascular dementia is associated with getting older, it can affect people of all ages. By 2050, the number of people living with vascular dementia is predicted to double. The medical director at British Heart Foundation said, "Funding research to better understand the relationship between heart and circulatory diseases and vascular dementia can prove critical."
Gillian's ballet star buys her beloved school by Liam Chorley. After 35 successful years running her own dance studio, Isle of Wight household name and professional dance teacher Gillian Cartwright-Voicey has decided to hang up her ballet shoes. Former student of Gillian's, Joel Morris, who has taught at the Royal Ballet School and the Royal Academy of Dance in London, has purchased the hall and will be taking up the reins. "I feel the school is in safe hands," said Gillian. Joel is a professional ballet and musical theatre dancer with more than 20 years' experience, a successor that can continue the school's success. "I came to the island with the aim of raising the standard, and over the years we've had wonderful successes for such a small area. It's great to see all the local talent blossoming. I feel we've really put the Isle of Wight on the map for dance." Many of our students are now performing in West End theatres and with major ballet companies all over the world, singing and dancing on cruise ships, and even running their own dance schools. Gillian was born in London and trained at Rambert School of Ballet and Arts Educational School before enjoying a successful career dancing professionally and performing across the globe. In 1983, she retired from dancing and moved to the Isle of Wight, soon establishing her own school in Shanklin, the Gillian Cartwright School of Dance. The school has since flourished, winning numerous mainland festival awards and winning the prestigious All England Dance Festival Group in London. "I've been involved in dance all my life," said Gillian, mentor and life member of the Royal Academy of Dance since 2010. "It's been amazing, but after working 7 days a week, I'm going to have to learn how to not work. It will be nice to spend more time with my husband, Peter, and hopefully travel." Joel, who is celebrating 20 years since signing his first professional contract, said, "It's the biggest honour in the world. I'm very excited to come home after so long. Gillian gave me my life. She's world class and I've been very lucky to learn from her, and now she's given me my second life. It's funny because we used to joke when I was little about me going to London and eventually coming home to run the school, and it's actually happened. I plan to bring all my years' experience, I've taught in all the top London schools and I know what the directors are looking for. I'll continue to run the school in the same vein as Gillian, a place of passion, high standards and most of all, fun. Gillian will take up a new role as guest teacher.
Island girls earn place at top ballet schools. 2 island dancers overcame stiff competition to secure their places amongst the nation's elite young ballerinas in London this summer. Ruby Rasmussen, 15, will attend the Royal Ballet School, and Zena Tong, 16, will go to Ballet Rampart. The duo found out they had been accepted onto the intensive ballet courses, having been selected from the thousands who applied for places. Both girls are members of the Shanklin-based Gillian Cartwright School of Dance and attend Christ the King College, Newport. Gillian Cartwright said Ruby and Zina were both gifted students in our school, attending 5 classes a week in ballet and modern dance. Their hard work and dedication has been rewarded in winning these prestigious dance courses at 2 of the UK's top ballet schools. I am so proud of their achievements and have confidence they will go on to have professional careers in dance.
Slipping, Sliding and Having Fun by John Marino. With the course at Newport's Seaclose Park unable to recover from heavy overnight rain, the 172 youngsters who took part in the 5th annual Isle of Wight Junior Cross Country Championships found it quite a challenge to keep their footing. Most of the island's primary schools supported the Saturday's event with high entry numbers, particularly from Northwood, the Bay, Gurnard and Newchurch schools. In spite of the bad weather, the youngsters who took part had fun slipping and sliding around the course. The fastest boy and girl were Scott Fossa, Honeyhill, in 7 minutes 35 seconds, and Matilda Brown, Arraton, in 8.37 seconds. Trophies for the first 3 in each age group and medals given to all runners were presented by Ride Harriers athlete Charlie Metcalf. Slipping, Sliding and Having Fun by John Marino. With the course at Newport's Seaclose Park unable to recover from heavy overnight rain, the 172 youngsters who took part in the 5th annual Isle of Wight Junior Cross Country Championships found it quite a challenge to keep their footing. Most of the island's primary schools supported Saturday's event, with high entry numbers, particularly from Northwood, the Bay, Gurnard and Newchurch schools. In spite of the bad weather, the youngsters who took part had fun slipping and sliding around the course. The fastest boy and girl were Scott Fossa, Honeyhill, in 7 minutes 35 seconds, and Matilda Brown, Arraton, in 8 minutes 37 seconds. Trophies for the first 3 in each age group and medals given to all runners were presented by Ride Harriers athlete Charlie Metcalf.
Coronavirus no bar for Seven Hills race. The spectre of coronavirus did not put off keen cyclists from taking part in the gruelling Seven Hills mountain bike challenge around the island's countryside on Sunday. Around 170 took part in the 3rd annual race, just a handful short of last year's record number, which followed a course designed to test a rider's strength, endurance and determination. The first riders through were Wight Mountain Shop and e-bikers Russ Newnham in 2 hours, 6 minutes and 39 seconds and Will Downer 2 hours, 6 minutes and 46 seconds. Event organiser Gareth Shilton said, "After deliberations and taking advice, the Seven Hills event went ahead, with extra precautions in light of the recent COVID-19 virus. The riders left Freshwater Bay in blustery conditions. Their goal, the finish line, 26 miles away at Sandown Airport. The course was mostly off-road and was steep, slippery and muddy in places.
Amelie's Triple Title Triumph by John Marino. Squash. The most exciting young British squash talent in the country, Islander Amelie Howarth, underlined just how big a future she has in the sport by winning 3 major tournaments over back-to-back weekends. Amelie of Godshill, who attends Millfield School in Somerset, regarded as the best in the country for nurturing young sporting talent, won the French and German Junior Opens, then the English National Junior Championships at under 15 level. It is an incredible achievement for 14-year-old Amelie, who took up the game when she was aged 6. Her meteoric rise in the sport has seen her reach the number 1 spot in the UK and Europe, and she goes into tournaments with seemingly all the pressures of being a top seed. In the French Junior Open in Lille, Amelie went into the event as an under-13 title holder and as the number 5 seed of 8 players. After a comfortable first round match against French player Céline Romba, 11-6, 11-2, 11-5, she dropped her first set in a 3-1 victory over Nargol Ramazanzadeh, Iran, in round 2. It was the same winning margin in the quarter-finals against the number 1 seeded Riana Alexova, Czech Republic, then another French player, Daphne Maurier. Amelie saved her best form for the final, dominating it to beat Maria Arseniev, Russia, 13-11, 11-6, 11-5. Amelie took her great form into the German Junior Open in Hamburg a week later as number 1 seed. After a first round bye, she opened with an easy 11-2, 11-5, 11-5 win over Rose Lucas Marcuzzo, France, before beating Russian Varvara Klueva in 4 sets. As she did in the French Open, Amelie saved her very best for Chloe Crabb, Belgium, in the semi-finals, and against Spain's Ona Blasco with straight sets victories. Fast forward another week and Amelie, a product of Adam Domeney's Alouette Squash Academy, did it yet again in the English National Championships in Hull, again going in as the number 1 seed. Her only drop set was in her 3-1 semi-final win against Maya Shah, Warwickshire, followed by another great performance in a tight final against Yorkshire's Francesca Hall, winning it 11-9, 12-10, 12-10. Reflecting on her achievement, Amelie said, "I really enjoyed all the tournaments, so to come out of it with titles in all of them feels amazing. I'm really happy and looking forward to the next one." Her father Robert, who supports her at every event, was proud of Amelie's triumphs. "We went into these 3 big tournaments with high hopes, but for Amelie to go on to win all 3 in a row far succeeded our expectations," he said.
It's goodbye from Susan.
And from Chris. This is the second part of the County Press, read by me, Chris.
And me, Susan.
Colin's a Hero, from Terry Hack of Bryston. We read in the County Press, 13th of March, of Bryston Cubmaster Colin Bridges being barred from the scouting movement after 30 years of service for his sole conviction on a charge of grievous bodily harm committed 33 years ago during a football match. People who don't know him might think he was one of the thugs who infest our streets everywhere. Nothing could be further from the truth. Although my wife and I know him, as do many in the village, I would not describe us as close friends. I first met Colin at a parish council meeting in 2001. He was, and still is, a parish councillor. He is skilled at all sorts of repair situations, and I was amazed at the many tasks around the parish he took on in his own time. He is possessed of a dry wit and is most friendly. His views are firm but balanced, and is a well-presented natural leader. My own personal gain as a townie is his extensive knowledge of the countryside. Maybe the hands of the Scouting Association are tied by law, but that does not preclude them from creating an appeal mechanism where none exists at present. So another cub leader needlessly bites the dust.
Bacon left his sinking ship. From Councillor Dave Stewart, leader of the Isle of Wight Council. I read with some interest the Diatribe of Defence, County Press Letter, 13th of March 2020, from former council leader Jonathan Bacon, as he sought to claim the need for the Isle of Wight Council to do better. This prompted me to write to the county press to put the record straight. Mr. Bacon knows very well the previous independent administration led by him walked out of their leadership responsibilities at the end of 2016, claiming they were unable or unwilling to balance the books. The consequence of this decision was to leave the councils exposed to the possibility of the government needing to step in to run the council through commissioners. His decision created the very cliff edge he describes. Fortunately, a number of other councillors quickly agreed to form a cross-party coalition, including independent councillors, and has stepped up to provide the leadership. In a very short space of time, we got a grip, delivered a lawful and balanced council budget, and more importantly protected the future of our island community. What we inherited was a position where reserves were at a minimum, with finances that had put the council at high risk and the administration was dysfunctional. Or to quote their deputy leader from the past, the administration was in a real mess. Whether someone who walked out on their responsibilities to the community should return to that type of role is another matter. I believe islanders will apply their common sense to that situation if and when it arises. Contrast the past with the position we are in now, where we in administration we have set 4 lawful and balanced budgets, dramatically improved our reserves, have an adult social care provision being recognised with national awards for its quality of service delivery, island schools receiving millions of pounds of investment, environmental plans and recycling that are outstanding, and a regeneration programme that will transform the island. Led by island conservatives, the council is delivering on the commitment to ensure the island is truly an inspirational place in which to grow up, live, work and visit. I am currently leading on our efforts to secure an island deal, and as Mr. Bacon should appreciate, this matter is expected to be dealt with by government through the funding formula which is due to report in the autumn. So I can assure him and other readers that, as a council, we are certainly working for the good of the island. We are also securing future opportunities that will bring an economic boost to the island, such as the last leg of the Tour de Britain in 2021, an amazing opportunity that will bring our island together and raise our profile internationally. So I will continue now to focus on my immediate priorities as council leader of addressing the challenges of coronavirus and working with our MP to deliver a new island plan that will ensure we deliver the type of housing we need on the island, a plan that is fit for the future. Finally, I can assure Mr. Bacon that we as a council are well away from that cliff edge he led us to.
Festival danger from Mr. P. Dodson of Ventnor. I am hoping you may be able to shed some light on my inquiry. Glastonbury Pop Festival and many other events where large crowds will congregate have been cancelled due to the coronavirus outbreak. My query is, why is the Isle of Wight Pop Festival allowed to go ahead? Music fans will be coming to the island from all over the UK, which in turn could escalate the number of virus cases here. Editor's footnote. It is by no means certain the Isle of Wight Festival or any other large-scale event on the island this summer will go ahead. The organisers will make decisions when the time is right.
2 rolls each from Collingfirth, Bembridge. From what I can find out about this new virus, like all other flus, it lasts for about 10 days. After that, you either get better or you are dead. Either way, you will not need more than 2 toilet rolls.
Solent Barrier from David Parkinson of Tottenham Bay. Are we at the point where we stop providing cross-Solent travel for all but medical cases in order to allow us to associate freely among our friends and neighbours and keep our local businesses going as far as we can?
Wider View, Bob, from Hans Bromwich, Cows. It is very revealing that our MP, Bob Seeley, has made a public appeal to hear the views of businesses on the island over the issue of the coronavirus epidemic. I would have thought it would have been far more appropriate to request to hear the views from the wider island community, an electorate he is there to represent.
Herd immunity is a risky strategy from Paul Watson of Freshwater. As a former healthcare scientist and university lecturer, it is with the utmost urgency that I write to question the potential consequences of the government's persistence with their herd immunity strategy to manage this epidemic. Out of line with the rest of the world and criticised by the WHO, we ploughed on regardless. This high-risk strategy is likely to result in significantly higher death rates than elsewhere in the world. The principle of achieving herd immunity at any cost is theoretical, based on a mathematical model, and will only be achieved by allowing the virus to sweep through the country. It is effectively a scientific experiment with our lives as the test material. The government openly admits this approach will require 60% of the population to become infected in order to achieve a protective level of immunity. They even state they do not intend to stop the virus totally. With a population of 66 million, even if the infection could be stopped at 60% of the population, almost 40 million people will be infected. Using government figures, fatality rates appear to be 1.5 to 2% of infections. This could result in well over 500,000 deaths. Only the UK government has accepted this level of infection and death rate. If the virus mutates in the future, the acquired immunity may be ineffective. It will be the vulnerable and elderly that will make up the vast proportion of fatalities. The consequences for the Isle of Wight are obvious. There is a much safer and alternative science-based strategy to manage the epidemic. Introduce basic measures such as locking down and social distancing. We have seen this work in China and South Korea. Herd immunity is normally achieved via a safe vaccine. Great progress is already being made. This approach, as followed by other countries, should significantly reduce the high number of unnecessary deaths. We must make our voices heard to change the UK strategy. Do you think this strategy would be followed if fatalities targeted infants and the young? Not a chance.
Protect at Risk from David Morse, Shanklin. The government's COVID-19 epidemic strategy appears to allow as much infection as possible, presumably in the hope of developing herd immunity in the long run. However, in the exponential growth phase, it is imperative that those who are most at risk are protected. Therefore, everyone who has potentially comprised immune response should be isolated, which means that although schools are open, students who are at risk must be given authorised absence and not remain under the threat of fines, which our council appears to be addicted to. Any adults who are similarly at risk, and there is a high proportion of elderly on the Isle of Wight, must have provision in place for them to isolate for their protection. The rest of us, healthy, fit and relatively young, could then crack on and catch the virus to gain and spread immunity, so long as we can ensure we avoid spreading it to those at risk. As it stands, the vulnerable are not adequately protected. This ought to be the first priority of all our public services.
Let us stay in cars on Red Funnel, from Alistair Elliott of Gurnard. I have written to the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency, MCA, requesting it reconsiders its guidance that passengers on Red Funnel ferries are not permitted to stay in their cars while in transit. I am in my 60s and have parents in my 90s whom I see regularly. Hence, I am very keen to avoid the virus and am taking all reasonable steps to protect myself. This includes minimising unnecessary social contact. I am a regular passenger on Red Funnel ferries. The passenger lounges on a full crossing are packed, and there is simply not enough space for everyone to maintain a safe distance from each other. The risk of catching something in such a crowded enclosed space is higher than the safety risks of remaining in the car during a short crossing with an excellent safety record. I would be happy to sign any disclaimer taking full responsibility for the decision to remain in the car against the advice of the MCA and Red Funnel. On behalf of myself and my family, I ask the MCA to let us take the necessary steps to protect ourselves from the overriding present risk.
Let's try to feel glad all over. From Rod Medway, Godzill. Winston Churchill said, "The pessimist sees difficulty in every opportunity. The optimist sees opportunity in every difficulty." Now, there is no denying our country and island are going through difficult times, and yet it is our attitude to those problems which will determine how well we survive, how well we come out of the other side. Are they obstacles to defeat us or challenges to make us stronger and help us learn lessons? Huge amount of research over the years have consistently shown positive attitudes get better results and those with them live longer. Reasonable optimism can pay dividends as wide-ranging as health, longevity, job success and higher scores on achievement tests. Pollyanna is a 1913 novel by American author Eleanor H. Porter and considered a classic of children's literature. Pollyanna is a person characterized by irrepressible optimism and a tendency to find good in everything. She finds out that most of the local people are quite sad and ungrateful, and so she uses the glad game, which her father has taught her. The glad game consists of developing the habit of not dwelling on uncomfortable emotions in relations to life's disappointments or threats. The player is taught not to deny negative emotions, but to turn attention to think of something one could feel glad about in the situation. For example, the island's roads aren't perfect, but I'm glad at least we don't have any noisy motorways. I have to self-isolate, but I'm glad that it gives me the opportunity to read some of those books I've had on the list for ages. The hovercraft might have to stop running in bad weather, but I'm so glad the island has the only commercial service in the world. When we were stuck in traffic on the school run, I was glad to have a little sing-song with my daughter. On top of Old Smoky made her roar with laughter. When we focus on the positive, even something negative is happening. We learn to redirect our thoughts and stop wallowing in misery. Gratitude and perspective are direct routes to inner peace. I invite your readers to use the letters page not only as a whinge board, but give it value added with a little glad game sentence at the end. E.g., the letters page may be full of whinging, but the County Press is such a good read, well written and full of interesting articles. Such good value, what an asset to island life.
So proud to win award. IWASP, Isle of Wight Against Scams Partnership, is delighted to share their news with you. Last week, at an awards ceremony, the partnership was one of 16 projects nominated for a local government award in the customer focus category. After being shortlisted to 3, we were immensely proud to walk away with the Gold Award. It is really heartening to know that the work we are doing in preventing scams and supporting victims on the island is being recognised nationally and reinforces the need for this work to continue and grow. If your organisation is interested in becoming part of this award-winning partnership and you are in a position to offer support and guidance to scam victims, please contact us on trading.standards@iow.gov.uk. To support the work we do, we work closely with the National Scams team and use their resources to help us educate and raise awareness around scams and doorstep crime. If you would like to learn a little more about scams and the impact they have, go to friendsagainstscams.org.uk and watch a short 20-minute video. This information may help you protect yourself or someone you care about.
Wight Memories. Victoria Tavern. Owners old and new. By Lucy Morgan. A former landlady, whose family name still hangs above the door of a recently renovated Isle of Wight pub decades after she poured her last pint there, has been given a guided tour of the freshly renovated building. Violet Myram ran the Victoria Tavern in East Cowes for more than a decade. In 1956, Violet and her former husband Robert called time and moved away from the island. Robert's parents, Maurice and Daisy Myram, ran the pub before them. For 50 years, the Myram family provided a social hub and a friendly ear at the popular watering hole in Clarence Road. Flash forward to 2020. 10 months ago, Aidan Jones took the business on with an aim to restore it as a must-visit community business. He has since renovated it and has started serving food. When Violet, now aged 98, found herself back on the Isle of Wight, she was warmly welcomed behind the bar. Violet told the Isle of Wight County Press, "It doesn't look anything like it did. It was totally different. It looks magnificent, all modern. I couldn't stand behind the counter now. I'm too short." When Violet was in charge of the pumps, the pub was one of the island's busiest. She said it had one of the best trades on the Isle of Wight. Boxing Day especially, we used to serve until 4 o'clock in the morning. At the back of the club room, the headquarters of the Boiler Makers Union and East Cowes Sailing Club. We had a very good social life down there. You could always go there for friends. Aidan said he was delighted to host the visit and is committed to keeping the Myram name on a sign above the door, hanging proudly alongside his own. He said, "It was amazing to meet Violet. We walked around the whole pub and she was telling me how it used to be laid out. She asked about the sign. One says Myram's and the other says Wight Taverns, my company. She was amazing, very sweet. She still enjoyed being behind the bar. Aidan plans to display the Myram's family old photos in the pub that has left Violet's sons with plenty of fond memory. Robert Jr. was snapped helping to build a slipway used by sailors on the River Medina when they stopped off for a pint. Meanwhile, Robert Sr. worked at the J. Samuel Wight boatyard and later trained as a Spitfire pilot in the war, dipping his wings to East Cowes as he flew over the island. So did Violet give the Victoria Tavern's current landlord any top tips? She told the Isle of Wight County Press, no. Aidan's a very nice chap. They're so young now, they've got all their own way. The family is keen to hear Islanders' memories and see photos of the Victoria Tavern from the 1940s and 50s. Email Lucy M at Isle of Wight County Press mail.co.uk.
My view. A panel of columnists take it in turn to give their take on life as it is played out on the Isle of Wight. This week, Malcolm Mime. Help! Coronavirus is turning me blue. This is my third article of 2020 and I find myself writing on a similar theme. In my piece published in January, I praised our Tory MP Bob Seeley and suggested we give him a chance rather than attack him. In February, I praised our local Tory council for the way they have brought our schools back on track, and now I am just about to praise our Tory government for the way they are handling the coronavirus outbreak. Have I become a Tory without even realising it? It's a horrifying thought, and if I'm honest, I would rather have corona. So, why am I here praising bumbling Boris? Well, in short, he doesn't seem to be bumbling at all at present, and instead is listening to the advice of the experts, in particular the UK's Chief Scientific Advisor, Sir Patrick Vallance, who I have to say fills me with great confidence. When other countries were going into lockdown, Johnson and Vallance appeared on our television screens to explain in plain English why it would be wrong for the UK to lock down too early, and that to avoid everyone getting the virus at exactly the same time, it made sense to let people catch it early so that we can build up herd immunity. The left were very quick to attack Vallance's scientific advice and accused Johnson of wanting to kill people off. At the end of the day, none of us are experts, and there hasn't been a pandemic in the UK in our lifetime. So it's hard to know if Boris is taking advice from the right people or not. But just as I am trusting Bob Seeley to deliver us the island deal, and just as I am trusting Dave Stewart to turn our Isle of Wight schools into great education centres, I am trusting our Tory government to handle this corona crisis in the correct manner. The stakes are as high as they could possibly be, and if I die, I shall be back to haunt the lot of them. As for the corona crisis itself, it is showing up some ugly sides of human nature. Not only have we seen people fighting in the shopping aisles over toilet paper, but last week one of the large supermarkets on the island had to take an Oriental member of staff off the tills as shoppers were refusing to be served by them. What is wrong with people? Personally, I'm hoping to get the virus sooner rather than later. If you get it when everyone else has got it, then you won't get any treatment and there won't be any medicines. So get in early, I say. On a serious note, it is important we encourage the older members of our community to stay indoors, away from crowds, because if they catch this thing, it really could have dire consequences. The problem is, our oldies are a stubborn lot and don't like being told what to do. Anyway, I'm off now to go in search of some paracetamol. Last Friday I couldn't buy any in Ryde for love nor money. I blame the Tories.
That's all we have time for. We will see you next week.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Good evening. Tonight, the implications for blind people of measures to combat coronavirus. Are the risks of isolation greater? And for a group of people for whom touch is so crucial, are there techniques we can adopt to keep us safe? And after 50 years of campaigning, are we finally going to get our pavements back? But first, much of the information pouring out from government and medical experts applies to visually impaired people just as it does to anyone else. But a number of you have been contacting the programme concerned about the impact that some of the plans to keep the virus at bay could have on blind and partially sighted people. An email from Kirsten Hearn pulled together many of those concerns, and she's been telling me about her worries.
The social contact stuff is making me quite edgy, and I'm just thinking about when I'm making journeys to different workplaces and stuff, you know, I get assistance from people, and I'm just wondering if social distancing is being applied, whether I won't get the kind of assistance that I might need. Because people seem to be overreacting to lots of things, although this is a very serious situation we're in. But I'm just wondering if, aside from bulk buying everything, they decide not to go within a mile of anybody. How do visually impaired people get assistance getting across a difficult road or finding our way into somewhere which we may not know? So that's one of my edginesses.
Because touching is natural, isn't it, for people trying to help us, and normally perhaps people complain about the fact of people touching too much, but you're worried about maybe people being afraid to touch at all. That
makes me edgy. I am also really very edgy about the selfishness of bulk buying and panic shopping. I get my groceries online, and everything seemed to be available to me, but when it arrives, some key things aren't, like loo paper, for example. Now, if I was sighted, I'd go moseying on down the road and peeking into a few shops, and I'd probably run to ground some loo roll. But that's quite difficult for me to do as a blind person by myself. I've compared it in some way to how I feel when we have heavy snow. You know, and I feel kind of like a little bit imprisoned already, and a bit that I'm having to rely on other people who are very kind and, you know, supportive and all that kind of stuff. But in a sense, it's removing my independence.
Can I just raise another issue which plays into this whole thing of the extent to which we as blind people depend on touch? Michael Hughes has got in touch with us, and he says there are implications for blind people if, for instance, we avoid the handrail on stairs, as he did. He tells us yesterday at the railway station. He said you don't use the handrail, you risk tripping or falling over. And he concluded it was safer to hold the handrail running his hand underneath rather than on top. I just wondered, are there other things like this which your dependence on touch has made you aware of?
Yes, I mean, I am when I'm on the bus or on the tube, I hold the handrail because I don't want to go hurtling along the carriage or end up in somebody's lap or something like that. So actually, I wear gloves and have to try and school myself not to touch my face because it's something I do quite a lot. You know, yeah.
Now you've been talking there about people getting help, but by way of contrast, you're worried a bit about people being over restricted. What's your concern about that?
I've heard about all this, you know, stuff about people aged 70 or with pre-existing conditions must stay at home for the next 4 months. And I'm really worried about suddenly being, you know, under house arrest.
You're worried about the assumption of vulnerability just because someone is blind?
Yes, indeed. And someone like me is pretty fit, actually, and I'm well at the moment. And I get the urgency of this, but I think there's a sort of, there has to be a level of balance here.
One more thing, you've talked quite a lot about the help that people need. Who do you think should be offering this added help?
Well, I think it needs to come from the local authorities and from the health service, because those two kind of key organisations are very important because, you know, their services need to be accessible, and from a local authorities' point of view, they need to be in contact with their older and disabled people and to be, you know, clear that they're being checked on. I think there's a huge role to play for voluntary organisations, faith groups and others around the place to make sure that they're supporting people who they're in contact with.
Kirsten Hearn. And don't forget, there are 180 of those voluntary organisations for visually impaired people throughout the UK. We've spoken to the Department of Health and Social Care. They're not tailoring different advice for blind people. The RNIB told us that at this point they weren't adding to government guidelines. The visual impairment charity based in the north, Henshaws, has told us they are providing phone support and they'll be offering specific advice next week. Meanwhile, guide dogs are making changes to the services they provide. Their Director of Operations, Peter Osborne, explained how they were responding to the latest government advice.
Obviously, with the fast developing situation, we will not be in a position to deliver face-to-face services to people. So what we're actually going to be doing is providing a lot more support via telephone, obviously via the internet as well. We're looking at the possibility of setting up almost a virtual cup of tea type service so that we can get people chatting to each other through these difficult times. And our aim is to make sure that we provide people with as much information as possible so that they can continue to support themselves during this very difficult and challenging time for a lot of people.
Now, you mentioned providing services online, but as you know, there are quite a lot of people, perhaps particularly older people, but not necessarily, who struggle a bit with online. So what are you doing specifically for them?
We will be calling people directly. A lot of our teams obviously will be doing this. We've got a lot of staff and volunteers who will be supporting that. So absolutely, it's not possible for everybody to access online services, and we wouldn't expect that. But we will definitely be working to support people through the phone wherever possible.
And in particular, what kind of information are you expecting people to need?
Yeah, we know that people are going to have concerns about exercising their dogs and how to keep their dogs entertained during these quite difficult times. So we'll have some ideas about how they can do that. We need to make sure that obviously people can get food for their dogs, and if there are any challenges with that, we will support people to address it. But also people who've been benefiting from our My Guide service, and let's keep in mind that 50% of the people that we support with the My Guide service are over 70. Obviously, they're not going to be benefiting from that face-to-face service, so we'll be trying to recommend other local groups that we become aware of that are actually providing support. There's some great community effort going on around the country to make sure that people don't become isolated. So we'll be telling people about those groups as we become aware of them.
And just remind people who don't know what the My Guide service is.
Yeah, the My Guide service is a sighted guiding service where we volunteers will go out to people and will support them to do what they need to do. So obviously that's very much a face-to-face service which relies on some fantastic volunteers who enable us to deliver that, many of whom are also now going to be experiencing the challenges of needing to self-isolate. So we just realise it's going to be impossible for us to continue that face-to-face service for some time.
And can I just ask you, where are the people who are going to be giving this information on the phone? Who are they drawn from?
They'll be drawn from our existing staff and also our volunteers. Many of our staff are obviously going to be working from home. So we're currently enabling that to happen as best we can through the telephone systems that we have. So it will be our existing staff and volunteers who will be providing that support.
Peter Osborne, and we'd like to hear about how you're coping. Now back to the more workaday problems, which will presumably still be with us when the coronavirus crisis is hopefully a bad memory. One of the longest running irritants for blind people has been cars, vans, even lorries parked on our pavements. But a few weeks ago, In Touch listeners got an early heads up from Transport Secretary Grant Shapps that things might be about to change.
Yeah, I think these things are of concern, and you mentioned something before earlier, which is cars parked on pavements, and I can let your listeners know that I will be very shortly saying some more on exactly this subject, because I think that it is right that people should be able to have an expectation of being able to step outside their homes onto the pavement and being able to reasonably walk down that pavement. Now, we're some way from that, I appreciate, and I'll be saying more about it very soon.
Well, that announcement has now come, and Tom Walker has been looking into its implications for us. So, Tom, what exactly has the government said now?
Well, Peter, last year the Department for Transport carried out a review which looked at the problems caused by pavement parking, whether current legislation works and whether there's a case for changing the law. They found that pavement parking causes serious problems for 95% of blind and partially sighted people and 98% of wheelchair users. As a result of that review, the government now intends to do a further consultation this summer on proposals to alleviate those problems that cars parked on pavements cause for people with mobility or visual impairments, as well as parents with prams. They're looking at how a nationwide ban on pavement parking enforced by local authorities might work. There would inevitably be some exceptions, but the default would be for a ban. They also say that a tailored approach may be needed in rural and suburban areas as they face different challenges.
And there's no playing down the fact, is there, that this does cause real problems for real people, doesn't it?
Absolutely it does. Diane Marks told BBC News about how pavement parking affects her guide dog.
If he doesn't feel safe about getting past that vehicle on the pavement because it's parked on the pavement, he will actually then safely take me out into the road to have to get around the vehicle. And this causes a safety issue, and it's dangerous for me because I can't see oncoming vehicles or see them from behind me. So it's extremely dangerous.
And equally tricky for cane users as well, of course. So what are the rules now, Tom, as things stand?
Well, they differ between London and the rest of the country. In London, parking on the pavements is illegal, which can be enforced by local authorities. In the rest of the country, however, only the police can intervene, unless, of course, there are yellow lines in place already. In England, councils do have the option of traffic regulation orders if they want to stop motorists from parking on the kerb. For this, though, they need to publish the order in a newspaper, and they can be very bureaucratic and expensive.
And now Scotland have already taken steps, haven't they?
Yes, in 2016, members of the Scottish Parliament voted in principle to make pavement parking illegal. The law has now been changed, and parking on the pavements will be prohibited subject to a number of exemptions. The law comes into effect in 2021 and will be enforced by local authorities.
Tom Walker, thank you. So, how effective will these measures be? Well, Sarah Lambert is Head of Social Change at the RNIB. She gave me her reaction.
We're delighted that the government are finally looking to ban pavement parking in England. Blind and partially sighted people tell us that a range of street obstructions really hamper their ability to get out and about, and pavement parking is a big part of that. So it's great that the government are finally listening and look like they're going to take some clear action.
Perhaps the key word in what you've just said is finally, because this has been going on a long time, as well as yourselves. I mean, the National Federation of the Blind had their famous Give Us Back Our Pavements campaign. Why do you think this has taken so long?
Well, we've been campaigning for this for a very long time, and as you say, other organisations have too. And we've just seen various kind of delays from government. There are some issues where, different kind of road users are a bit concerned about some of the impacts of a ban on pavement parking. But we're really keen to find something that can really work to make sure that pavements can be kept clear and that any new law will be enforceable too.
Now, of course, as you imply, we've heard promises before. There is a consultation still going to happen before this happens. What is the RNIB going to be doing to make this a reality? What are the points you'll be pressing?
At the moment, there is a ban on pavement parking in London, and that law has been in place since 1974. And in addition, the Scottish Government recently also legislated in this area. So, we know that this is something that can be done. So we'll be looking to kind of point to those examples to government to say, look, an outright ban is something that you should be considering and should be taking forward. And we'll be also talking to blind and partially sighted people too, and making sure that they can get involved in the consultation and that they're putting their views forward to government to really demonstrate just what an important issue it is to blind and partially sighted people.
But anyone walking the streets of London, where, as you say, it has been illegal, knows, A, that there are exceptions because of worries, for example, about narrow roads or emergency vehicles getting through. But it also, where there are no exceptions, it's just ignored. How confident can we be that this is going to actually be enforced, even if it does get through?
Absolutely, there really is a challenge around enforcement. I think what's really interesting is that the Guide Dogs did a survey recently that showed that only 26% of blind and partially sighted people had daily problems with pavement parking in London, compared to 45% UK-wide. So it does show that although there are still problems in London, we are in a better situation in London than we are elsewhere. But we also need to make sure that enforcement does get better in London and elsewhere. So we'll be looking to government to be, firstly, making sure that they roll out a public awareness campaign to make sure that drivers realise where they are and aren't allowed to park. And then also we want to make sure that local authorities have the resources that they need to enforce the ban within their areas.
Which is quite a big if, isn't it, given the financial state of local authorities?
It will be a challenge, but given the importance of this issue to blind and partially sighted people, we'll be really pressing government to make sure that local authorities do have those resources available to them.
Of course, Scotland has introduced rules of its own, which are due to come into force. Are there lessons to be learned from that, do you think?
So Scotland will be introducing new legislation from next year, and they've very much looked at kind of the London model. So I think we very much we would like the rest of the UK to follow what Scotland has done.
Presumably it'll be interesting to see how that works when it is finally introduced.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it'll be very important to kind of see what is and what isn't working, how enforcement is rolled out across Scotland, and really learn from that example to make sure that it is effective elsewhere. And really calling on Wales and Northern Ireland too to follow suit.
Sarah Lambert, RNIB's Head of Social Change. And that's it for this week. We welcome your ideas on social isolation or touch techniques to keep you safe. You can go to our website as well to download tonight's programme and other editions of In Touch. But producer Kevin Core and I thought you might welcome a chuckle after what has been, let's face it, a tough week. We followed the steady rise of blind comedian Chris McCausland on this programme, who last Friday surely reached the pinnacle, starring in Radio 4's The Now Show. Let's end with his take on audio description, the technique of describing the action on films and TV programmes. It's potentially annoying for people who can see and therefore don't need it.
But here's something that might surprise you. I find it annoying as well, because the truth is, it tells you way too much. Someone will go, "See you later, bye."
He closes the door.
I'm not stupid, I know what a door sounds like. I don't need you telling me every single thing that happens in the programme.
Hello, my name's Steve.
He enters the room wearing a green T-shirt.
Exactly how key to the plot is the colour of this T-shirt? Audio description isn't new, though. I first encountered it in the late 90s. It was an extra audio track on DVDs that you could select so that if you were blind, you could get a DVD, you could sit down and you could watch a film on your own. Brilliant. What a fantastic idea. The only trouble was, though, you needed to be able to see the menus to turn it on.
Scaffolding news for Friday, the 20th of March 2020. Please note that we have not been given the updated information this week, so the following information is copied from last week's. West Wight Scaffolding, Tanners, 10 High Street, Yarmouth.
Cows and East Cows Scaffolding, Cameos, 16 Bath Road, Cows, 116B High Street, Cows, 24 Castle Street, East Cows, 128 Park Road, Cows, 16 Birmingham Road, Cows, 14 Clarence Road, East Cows, 36 St Andrews Street, Cows, 4A and 4B Clarence Road, East Cows, Skips, 31 Tennyson Road, Cows.
Ventnor Scaffolding, Highlands, Bellevue Road, Ventnor. Old Town Hall, 1 to 12 Albert Street, Ventnor. Yeoman's Cottage, High Street, God's Hill. Lawson's Coach House, Pound Lane, Ventnor. Blythe Cottage, Blythe Shoot, Chale. 1 West Street, Wroxall. Hoarding, Wroxall Primary School, Station Road, Wroxall.
Ryde, Seaview, Bembridge. Scaffolding. Flats 31 to 36, Merrymead Close, Ryde. 9 Winton Street, Ryde. Coburgs, Union Street, Ryde. 59 Union Street. Rockcliffe, Circular Road, Seaview. 5 High Street, Bembridge. 1 Colonnade, Lynn Street, Ryde. The Star Inn, 40 High Street, Ryde. 35 Simeon Street, Ryde. Skips, 35 Simeon Street, Ryde. And High Saltons off Ryde Road, Seaview.
Newport. Scaffolding. Phones for You, 50 High Street, Newport. 86A, Bernard's Shoes, St James Street, Newport. Chewy Travel Agents, 100 High Street, Newport. McDonald's, St James Street, Newport. 146 High Street, Newport. 3 Lugley Street, Newport. 46 Honeyhill, Newport. Cherry Picker, rear of 14 Waterford Road, Cowbourne Road, Newport.
Sandown. Scaffolding. 95 to 97 High Street, Sandown. Culver Parade, Esplanade, Sandown. 95 to 97 High Street, Shanklin. 55 High Street, Sandown. Barnaby's Cafe, 4 Pier Street, Sandown. Hoarding, 89 Downsview Road, Sandown.